You see, when we talk about tariffs and trade wars, most people imagine them as numbers on a news ticker or headlines flashing across their phones. They think it is something distant, something that only economists or politicians should worry about. But in reality, every delay, every hesitation in policy sends ripples through the lives of ordinary people like you and me. A tariff is not just a tax. It is a signal. And a delay in that tariff, that is a louder signal than the tariff itself, because it tells the entire world that uncertainty is now in control. Think about how businesses operate. A small manufacturer in Ohio or a farmer in Iowa doesn't make decisions on a whim. They plan months, even years in advance. They decide when to buy machinery, when to harvest, when to hire, when to expand, all based on a sense of stability. But when a tariff is announced, then delayed, and then delayed again, that stability is shaken. They start to ask, should I wait? Should I cut costs? Should I cancel that shipment I was planning to order from abroad? This hesitation is contagious. It spreads from one small business to another, from local investors to global markets. Stock markets don't react to the actual numbers of tariffs as much as they react to the uncertainty behind those numbers. A delay creates a pause, and that pause creates anxiety. And anxiety in economics is like a fog. It slows everyone down because no one can see clearly. Now here's the part that most people miss. A delay is never neutral. It feels like a relief at first. Oh, the tariffs aren't happening yet, so maybe things are okay. But beneath that surface calm, decisions are not being made, shipments are not being ordered, investments are not being committed, hiring is put on hold. And when the inevitable decision finally comes, the impact is doubled because the economy has been running in slow motion during the waiting period. That is what I call the hidden cost of delay. Philosophically, it reminds me of life itself. How many times have we delayed making a hard decision, thinking that waiting would make it easier? Maybe you were supposed to have that difficult conversation, take that career leap, start that new habit. You told yourself, not yet, I'll wait for the perfect moment. But in reality, the delay only made the wait heavier. The uncertainty grew, and when the moment finally arrived, the emotional cost had doubled. Trade is no different. When a leader delays a tariff, they are not just moving numbers on a spreadsheet. They are moving human psychology. They are teaching the market to expect uncertainty. And markets, like people, do not thrive in prolonged doubt. A farmer hesitates to plant. A retailer hesitates to stock. An investor hesitates to lend. Slowly, the gears of commerce turn slower and slower, not because of the tariff itself, but because of the fear of what might come next. And here lies the lesson that extends beyond economics and into the way we all live our lives. Hesitation in the face of responsibility often creates a bigger burden than action. When we avoid making decisions because they are uncomfortable, the consequences do not disappear. They accumulate. A leader's indecision can shake a market, just as an individual's indecision can stall a life. Some people might argue that waiting is sometimes wise. And yes, patience has its place. But there is a profound difference between strategic patience and fearful delay. Strategic patience is purposeful. It is waiting with clarity and communication. Fearful delay is different. It leaves people in the dark, guessing, anxious, and reactive. That is the kind of delay we see in tariff policies. And that is why the damage is often doubled when the decision finally lands. So what does this mean for you? Sitting here, listening to me speak. It means that leadership, whether in your home, your community, or your business, carries a responsibility to act with clarity. Uncertainty is a tax of its own, and sometimes it is more expensive than the policy itself. Every day that we leave decisions hanging in the air, we create a ripple that grows into a wave. And when that wave finally hits, it is far more powerful than it needed to be. So remember this, a delayed storm does not disappear. It only gathers more force. In trade, in politics, and in life, the cost of hesitation is always higher than the cost of action. When we talk about the effect of delayed tariffs, it's easy to think of it as a one-sided problem, something that only affects America internally. But in reality, the impact is double-layered. It strikes both at home and abroad. This is the double effect that quietly unfolds when decisive action is replaced with prolonged hesitation. Domestically, the cost is not just economic, it is psychological. Imagine the small business owner who is already walking a tightrope between profit and loss. Imagine the farmer who depends on selling crops overseas, or the factory manager whose supply chain relies on imported parts. These are real people with real families whose livelihoods are caught in the fog of indecision. Every announcement of a tariff feels like a breath of relief, but that relief is shallow. Underneath, there is a gnawing uncertainty. What happens next month? Should I expand or hold back? Should I hire or wait? And this hesitation has a domino effect. When small businesses freeze their plans, larger businesses feel the slowdown. When local businesses hesitate, the banks notice the lack of borrowing. When borrowing slows, investment dries up. A decision at the very top of leadership, simply to delay, sends ripples that multiply into waves, touching people who may never even follow the news about tariffs. But the second half of this double impact is global, and it's just as critical. The world does not still while one nation hesitates. International partners, competitors, and observers are always watching. Trade is not just about goods, it's about trust. When a country announces tariffs and then delays them repeatedly, it signals uncertainty to allies and opportunity to rivals. Competitor nations can use this hesitation to strengthen their own trade relationships, quietly filling the gaps while America wavers. Reputation in the global economy is like reputation in personal life. If you are known for being consistent and clear, people trust you. Deals are made on handshakes and opportunities come to you naturally. But if your word shifts with the wind, people start looking for more reliable partners. Tariff delays may seem like temporary tactics, but over time, they plant seeds of doubt in the minds of trading partners. They begin to wonder, will this agreement hold? Should we hedge our bets elsewhere? And this is where the double harm comes into focus. While domestic markets slow down in uncertainty, global partners start to look elsewhere. It is like a business losing both customers and suppliers at the same time. You don't just face economic slowdown. You face a quiet erosion of influence, a subtle reputational cost that doesn't show up on spreadsheets, but is felt in boardrooms and foreign ministries. Now, let's take a step back and think about this not just as economics, but as human behavior. When you delay an important decision in life, whether it's committing to a path, confronting a challenge, or taking responsibility, you create two layers of consequence. First, your own life slows down. You hesitate, you lose momentum, you doubt yourself. Second, the world around you starts to adapt to your hesitation. Opportunities shift to someone else, relationships weaken, and trust quietly erodes. This is the psychological mirror of what happens in trade. Philosophically, hesitation carries a message whether we intend it or not. It says, I am unsure, I am unprepared, I'm inconsistent. In geopolitics, that message does not go unheard. Rivals see weakness in it, partners see risk in it. And in the end, the cost of that perception can far outweigh the original issue of the tariff itself. This is why I call it double impact. It's the kind of impact that leaves leaders scratching their heads, wondering why the numbers are slipping, even though they have not taken any official negative action. But in the world of psychology and human behavior, inaction often has more weight than action because it communicates doubt. And doubt spreads faster than any policy. Now, reflect on this in your own life. How often have you faced a decision that affected not just you, but the people around you, maybe in your business, your career, or your family? When you delayed, even with good intentions, the people who depended on your decision started to feel uncertain. That is the human equivalent of what's happening in the economy right now. Leadership is not only about making the right decisions. It's about making them with clarity and timing, because the cost of hesitation is always compounded by the reactions it triggers in others. So, as we look at these delayed tariffs, understand that the double is real. At home, hesitation breeds economic anxiety. Abroad, it signals unreliability and opens doors for others to take your place. The storm of consequences does not need to be loud to be destructive. Sometimes it is the quiet erosion of trust that does the most lasting damage. Remember this as a principle of life and leadership. When you delay responsibility, the world does not pause for you. It simply moves around you. We have spoken about the economic ripple effects of delayed tariffs and the double impact they create at home and abroad. But there is another layer to this discussion that often goes unnoticed, yet it is perhaps the most powerful of all: the psychological cost of policy indecision. Because economies are not driven by machines or numbers alone, they are powered by human confidence, by the belief that tomorrow can be planned for, invested in, and built upon. When leadership hesitates, it doesn't just delay an economic decision, it sends a signal to the human heart and mind. People begin to feel that uncertainty is the new normal. And once that feeling takes root, it spreads quietly but deeply. Markets are not just charts. They are reflections of human emotion. Investors don't invest because of numbers. They invest because they trust. Families don't spend because of statistics. They spend because they feel secure. When that security is shaken, the effect is invisible at first, but profound over time. We think of it like this. Imagine a captain of a ship sailing through stormy waters. The crew does not just look at the waves. They look at the captain. If the captain is calm, decisive, and clear, the crew feels reassured even in turbulence. But if the captain hesitates, looking from side to side, questioning every choice, the fear spreads. Even before a single wave hits, the ship begins to feel unstable because psychology can sink a ship long before water does. That is the silent cost of policy indecision. Every delay in implementing a clear path, whether it's a tariff, a law, or any major directive, erodes the trust that keeps people moving forward. It teaches society to doubt, to hold back, to hesitate. And hesitation is contagious. A business delays hiring. A family delays a purchase. An investor delays a project. Slowly, the pulse of the economy weakens, not because of tangible losses, but because of an invisible fog of caution. And here lies the philosophical truthing uncertainty is a tax all on its own. It is not written on paper, but it is paid in lost opportunities, in slowed growth, in dreams that remain on hold. And it is a tax that compounds over time, because the longer people hesitate, the more they internalize that hesitation as normal. That is, when a temporary policy delay transforms into a lasting psychological slowdown. This is not just about governments and economies. It is about all of us. How many times have we lived in this exact pattern in our personal lives? We hesitate to make the hard decision. We delay the phone call, the career move, the leap of faith. And while we wait, life continues without us. The world moves around us, and we slowly teach ourselves, and those watching us, that indecision is acceptable. But here is the hard truthing: the longer we delay, the heavier the weight becomes, and the more life shrinks around our hesitation. A wise mentor once told me, clarity is a gift you give to others, and decisiveness is a gift you give to yourself. Leaders, whether of nations or of families, are not measured only by the correctness of their decisions, but also by the clarity with which they make them. A wrong decision can be corrected, but a delayed decision, prolonged without direction, leaves scars of doubt that take far longer to heal. The real danger of delayed tariffs, then, is not only the economic shock that eventually arrives or the double burden on domestic and global trust. It is the internal narrative it writes in the minds of people that instability is normal, that waiting is safer than acting, that leadership will always leave them guessing. And that mindset is what slows progress long after the policy itself has been resolved. So, what can we take away from this? Not just as observers of politics, but as participants in life. We must recognize that confidence is the engine of growth, and confidence requires clarity. Whether in your personal decisions or in the great halls of policy, do not underestimate the cost of hesitation. Waiting for the perfect moment often allows opportunities to slip silently away. And once that confidence is lost, rebuilding it takes far longer than we ever expect. Remember this: a delayed storm is not a cancelled storm. The clouds of indecision gather quietly, and when they finally break, the damage is always greater than if we had faced the winds head-on. In life, in leadership, in business, clarity is not a luxury, it is a responsibility. So let us leave with this reflection: if you do not decide, life will decide for you. And the cost of that surrender is always greater than the risk of action.